Hello again. Fancy that, it's me again. So, what I talked to Mark about right at the beginning, we had a conversation about what sort of things could we talk about in relation to this conference when we were really sort of trying to come up with ideas. And Mark sort of said that, and this surprised me a little bit, that it might be helpful to just sort of explain what it's like to try and get a message through to researchers in a large institution. Because if you work for an organisation, I used to myself work for a publishing organisation, or a couple actually, the managing director sends an edict out that might be, you need to change your email signature, for example, because we're running a promotion, and everyone does it. That's not the case in an academic environment, so let's have a little look, shall we? First of all, I'm going to go through this rather quickly because I'm assuming that most people are relatively familiar with what's going on in the UK in terms of the policy landscape, but we've got 3 sets of rules and they're all different. And the reason why they're different is the means by which we're supposed to make stuff available is different, and when we're supposed to do that is different. So that makes things rather complex in terms of managing the different funding requirements, because we can have a situation where there's an article that is affected by all 3 policies, because everyone's affected by the HEFCE policy because it relates to what you want to claim for the next research excellence framework, and we often have researchers who are funded by both COAF, the Charities Open Access Fund, which is underwritten by Wellcome, and the RCUK, so we've got to deal with all 3 policies. In addition to that, we've got data policies. Now, the EPSRC have had a policy requiring researchers to make underlying data available since 2011. However, what happened was they didn't do anything about checking that until last year. So they sort of made an announcement that as of the 1st of May 2015, they were going to start checking, and suddenly everybody panicked and started doing something about making sure their data was available. In the data environment, the principles for sharing data are very similar. So they've got a sort of, RCUK has a general statement about the principles for sharing publicly funded data are a public good and so on, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, the actual way they're implemented is not necessarily common, in that not all funders require a research data management plan, for example. Not all funders will check. Not all funders provide financial support, although this is slowly changing. So we've got quite a complicated situation, not just with open access, but also with making data available. And so what the researcher hears, and Graham alluded to this, is, I don't know, dog's breakfast is one word. It's really, really complicated. It's hard enough for us as people who do this as our jobs to keep on top of everything. The researchers who really aren't actually interested in any of this anyway, for them it's just major noise. So let's have a chat about some numbers. This is from one of the promotional kind of web pages Cambridge has. All universities like to talk about how great they are, and Cambridge is no exception. And so what we have is a large number of academics, 1,500 academics, but then we've got 3,500 contract research staff as well. Add on to that, we've got 4,000 PhD students. So you add that all up, and they're all the people in the university who are producing research. And all of those people are potentially affected by all of the policies that we need to deal with. Now, because the HEFCE policy relates to articles that you may wish to claim in a future Research Excellence Framework exercise, it potentially affects every single article that we publish. Because what we don't want to be in a position in 2021, which apparently is now the time frame we're looking at, to say, oh, that was a good article, better make it open access. Whoops, too late, because you didn't make it open access within the required period of time. So we're wanting to say to our researchers, get everything in, and that way you're covered. That's the sort of plan. Now, we don't know, we don't know how many publications Cambridge produces. This was mentioned earlier today as well. To me, this is quite shocking. In Australia, we've been collecting all publications from researchers for over a decade now. So to come to an institution where we don't even know, we've got no idea how many publications we've got. So best guess, we looked at the Web of Science and looked at Scopus for 2015. Probably there's going to be a few more that will be added to that because, of course, it's still only February, so there'll be a few more that haven't been indexed yet. But we think it's about 8,000 a year, approximately. And so our system, our open access system, received just over 3,000 in 2015. So it's not the full complement, as you can tell. So let's have a think about academia. Forget Cambridge, let's just think about the broader academic environment. It's a tribal activity. So some of you may be familiar with the concept of invisible colleges. It was work that was done some years ago now. And it was the idea that people relate to their community. So the community is not necessarily the person sitting next to you in your department. Your community is quite likely not sitting next to you in your department, especially in a smaller university. They're going to be internationally all over the world. It's a separate community to the actual college you're physically sitting in. So there's been work done by Tony Betcher and Paul Trowler on academic tribes and territories. It's very interesting reading. And there's another set of publications which sort of seem to have fallen off the radar a little bit, because I have read them and now I've been trying to track them down, and it's fascinating because what Betcher did was he actually interviewed a whole lot of people and asked them about their opinions about other academic disciplines, and universally they are dismissive. So everybody is dismissive of everybody else's discipline. Oh, that's just the physicists, what would they know? Or, well, we're much more pure because we're the mathematicians, and so on and so forth. So everybody thinks that their discipline's the best discipline and everybody else's discipline's rubbish. So we've got an environment where we've got tribal groups, disciplinary groups, and they all have their own normative methods of communicating and making sure that others know what's going on, and obviously publication is part of this. Researchers don't have any time. So there was a study that was done in Cambridge of researchers, and one of the things they did, they tracked people over a 48-hour period, sort of basically sat at their shoulder for 48 hours and watched what they did during the day, and came to the conclusion that researchers have approximately 20 minutes to devote to anything. So that's your window, if you're lucky enough to get one of the slots. I did blog about this not long ago in What Does a Researcher Do All Day? And one of the things that blog links to is the publishing experience map, where the same group of people mapped out the publishing experience for researchers and sort of talked about the times that they were trying to work out when they intersect with the institution, to see when it was that we could intersect with them to try and get their publications. And the short answer was they actually don't really intersect with the institution on the publication process. There's no real need for a researcher to tell the institution at any point that they have published. It's sort of seen as something that you do yourself. You might tell your department. You certainly wouldn't tell the administration of the institution, naturally. All right, so this is Cambridge's structure as pulled out from our website. As you can see, we've got 6 schools down the left-hand side there, and then we've got a whole lot of departments, and we've got a whole lot of faculties, and we've got a whole lot of institutes. So sometimes an institute's at the department level, sometimes an institute's at the faculty level, sometimes they're actually confolded into various versions. So what we can do is have a look at one of them. So this is the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. I couldn't actually, it would become even more ridiculous if I was able to include the 3 institutes that are also part of this school. So you can start to see that the structure of the organisation is fairly complicated. But then on top of that, at Cambridge, you've got the colleges as well. So colleges are their own organisations, their own financial organisations at Cambridge. So you've got the university and you've got the colleges. And some people in colleges are also in a faculty, and some people in faculty are also in a college, but there are people who are only in the colleges and there are other people who are only in faculty. So going to speak to all the biochemists in biochemistry doesn't mean you're going to get all the biochemists, because there are going to be biochemists who are actually based in various colleges, because the whole point of the college system is it's all mixed up. So you've got biochemists sitting at dinner next to physicists, next to an archaeologist, and the idea is that there's this cross-culture, feeding of cross-cultures and cross-disciplines, which is great, but it does make it quite challenging when you're trying to get to speak to everybody. And so when I was preparing for this talk, I thought, I know what I'll do. I will type up complex colleges, universities, Cambridge, and this page came up. Now you'll notice that it says 4 staff up the top. This is a page that you, if you look this up, will not be able to see. It's apparently so complicated that we need to have a whole separate section in our staff email page, web pages to try and explain how it all works. Been there a year, still have no idea. All right. Then on top of that, you've got the administration. This is from a pretty funky, actually, YouTube advertising piece for Cambridge, and it's called Cambridge in Numbers. And what we've got is 114 libraries. I work in the big main one, but there's 114 altogether. And we've got 29 colleges, and we've got 9 institutions like museums. That's another thing again. So we've got things like 9 museums. They also produce research output. Now, in a place where academic independence is sacred, I find it hilarious. I actually lugged this thing around until I found a set of scales in the library to weigh it. This is the university's statutes and ordinances. They weigh 3.25 kilos. So there's lots and lots of rules, and one of those rules is to do with IP. And at Cambridge, the IP is owned by the academic, and that is absolutely set in stone. You could knock somebody out with the IP section of the statutes. So we are in a situation where it's up to the academics to do things. We cannot tell them what to do in terms of their IP. There you go, that's just for you, Mark. So what we've got is a confusing and complicated policy landscape. We've got academics who are pretty hostile about being told what to do, and we've got a massive institution that's huge and unconnected. So the way we're trying to deal with it at Cambridge is we've got a really simple system. We've said to people, accepted for publication, send us your manuscript. And when they do that, it's very simple. They go in through the login system, so they press the button, it automatically knows it's them. They'll get a page that comes up and says, hello, whoever you are. It says, submit your manuscript, so you do a search and add your manuscript, and then there's a little bit of information that we ask people to fill in. Now, the reason why I've done it this way is if they get to this page and go, forget this for a joke and leave, we've already got their manuscript. So we could probably work it out from there. So we're well aware of how antagonistic our researchers are towards this whole process. So we're also doing a massive engagement program. So this is completely out of date because it's October last year, so we've done much more since then, but this relates to the kind of engagement we've been trying to do in relation to data and the number of sessions we've been given, talks we've given, the number of visits to our website. That 1,316 is the number of actual people sitting in a room that we've spoken to. We also do constant outreach, so we've got Twitter feeds, we've got a blog, we've got newsletters that go out for both open access and open data. We run postcards and banners, we've got promotional material that's downloadable. Basically, we'll do anything. We're desperate. So we've resorted to Byberries, so now we've got new little postcards that say, we can pay open access fees, because we figure if we offer money, maybe they'll come. We're offering tea room drop-ins, so we go in and sit in the tea room of a department of whatever, and we'll sit there and we have a little banner that says, ask us about open access, so that we can try and encourage people to engage. We're sending out email signatures to ask the departmental administrators, administrative equivalents in departments, if they could put those onto their emails. Of course, they can completely ignore us and mostly do. So, with all of this, how are we managing? Well, it does depend on how you look at it. So as of the 5th of February, this is a map of the submissions that we get through our system. We use a process called Zendesk, which is a help desk system, and it provides us with these kind of reports. So you can sort of see there's 3 different lines. The bottom line is the green line on that left-hand side. That's the number of actual unique valid HEFCE submissions. So we get lots of emails that come through, which is the top line, and sometimes they're just queries, and sometimes we also get submissions where it's an article that's maybe out of scope, or is so it's not a research article, or an ISSN conference publication and so on. We'll still make it open access if we can, but it's not, as far as HEFCE submissions, eligible. And you can see on the right-hand side our monthly target of 700, which is probably an underestimation. So we've got this sort of darker colour of 350, which would be half. And as you can see, we've consistently not even reached half. We got nearly there in January. We got up to 294. That was our best month. So in that respect, we're kind of getting about 30 to 35% of our output. And so you think, oh, that's not very good, is it, if you're aiming for 100%? But when you look at the broader picture, a lot of Cambridge research is actually being made open access anyway. So we've worked out approximately 56%, it sounds silly to say approximately and then 56, I should say approximately 55, but all eligible research is available. So we've joined the Springer Compact, where all publications that published out of the university are made open access, regardless of whether they're funded or not. We're developing compliance systems with Archive, and we've also got a considerable number of works that are published open access outside of the stuff that we do within the open access team. So there's quite a lot of material that's been made available. We're also doing some other projects, because you've got this rather kind of vague section in their policy which says we'll give you credit if you make other stuff available. Now, they haven't really made it clear what they mean, other stuff. They've used a slightly more technical word, but that's what it means. And they haven't really said what the credit will be. But we are trying to make other stuff available at Cambridge. So we've got an unlocking thesis program where we're really trying to ramp up the number of theses we've made available, and we're also embarking on an academic-led publishing program. There's quite a lot of it happening already in the institution. We're just trying to sort of kind of garner it together and help people with that program. The problem is we've got a really uninterested group of people in the academics. The trick with the HEFCE policy is that it's the institution that needs to be successful in this because it ends up being the funding for the institution. But what we are relying on is the individual academic to actually do something. And to the individual academic, they really couldn't care less. So it's a bit of a problem because we can do all we can, but if they don't come to the party, we're stuck because the author's accepted manuscript, unless the publisher provides it, and we have not really to date had a great success with those sorts of pilots, we're hoping that might change, unless the publisher provides it, we are entirely reliant on the academic to pull their finger out and send it to us. We can't extract it from their brains or extract it from their hard drives, they have to do it. So we've got a situation where we thought, what about Nature, Science, Cell, the Lancet and PNAS? They are journals that are probably going to be ones we'd want to claim in REF. So we had a look at all of the papers that Cambridge published in those journals over the last year, and only about a third, which is reflective of our general numbers that we're getting through the system, were available. So what we did was that we then contacted the authors of those articles and said, if this were this time next year, you wouldn't be able to claim this for REF because you haven't sent it to us. Can you send us your author's accepted manuscript? And fewer than 40% of the contacted authors responded. So that's with a direct appeal, with us saying, dear Professor Jones, your article titled blah-de-blah published in Nature on this date would not be compliant. So there's not really a great deal much more than we can do. So one of the things that is happening is we've got very confusing communications. If you think about the research life cycle that Graham was mentioning, or one of the many of them, we've got different people within the institution at different points in that research life cycle that is in contact with the researcher, and those people are not in contact with one another. So the people who help in the research operations office, they run the grant, so they help the researcher with developing the grant and at their grant application, and also with the process once they're successful to actually manage the money and do all of those things. So they're having conversations there. We're having conversations with them further down the track about making their work open access, and we're also trying to say you need to do good research data management right from the start, so we're helping people, so it's us at the grant application process that's helping them with writing the research data management proposal, but we don't communicate necessarily with the people in the research operations office about this process. And then at the end of the process, the research strategy office runs the REF return and then goes back also to the research operations office to put that stuff into ResearchFish, which is a program that's sort of supposed to list all of the articles that get published out of a grant. So what we've got is different communication happening at different times from different people to the researcher, and there's nobody looking at the whole picture of what, from a researcher's point of view, what messages are they getting and how are they getting them? Are they even helpful, or is it just noise? So what we've done, and I'm hoping this isn't a last ditch, but we are pushing to have a staff member employed just for 1 year in the first instance to find out who's saying what and to see if we can kind of pull this information together and make sure that the information we are giving researchers is consistent, not confusing. I've had a lot of interest from people around the institution in this idea. Nobody really so far has put up their hand to actually pay for this person, although there may be a glimmer of hope. There is one person who's sort of said there may be a pot of money that we might be able to apply for. But it's really quite important that we have joined up communications. Cambridge is not very good at joined up communications. We've only had an internal communications person for about a year. So up till now, communications was all about telling the rest of the world how great Cambridge is. Now, that's great, but at some point Cambridge has to talk to itself. So we've got an organisation where the Vice-Chancellor cannot actually send an email to his whole staff, not without a lot of effort to pull that list together. So it's a hard, complicated thing to get through to everybody. So there's no guarantees in this game. We're just trying everything we can, and I hope that gives you some indication of kind of what it's like to try and get a message through to lots of people. It's complicated, but hey, that's what we're here for.